Hello. I am Mandy Pretty, and I'm here with my amazing auntie, Linda Tellington-Jones, and Griffin. We've got Mr. Griffin back there, just as an excellent supervisor. It's a managerial position, I think. How are you, Linda?
And I'm great, but Griffin is just cleaning his street feet because we were at lunch at Tommy Bahama's on Jupiter Island. And of course, he has to clean himself after being out on the street.
He's pretty civilized.
He's like a cat. It's so funny. And then he licks his paws and then cleans his face with his
I love it. He's so cute. He's got such a spirit. We're back. We've had a little break because we've had a lot going on, but I'm pretty excited. I mean, you've really lived, Linda. So we were just talking about that. We've only made it, we're still in the 60s and you've still done so much. So I think where we left off, the last episode, we talked about some of your experiences in the endurance riding world, which were pretty extensive. And then where you and Went were in Los Osos, at the ranch you were at, and then where you went from there and why you decided to leave. I guess that's where we're headed next.
Well, actually, so we went from teaching at Chadwick School in 58, 59, then went into partnership on the Hemet Thoroughbred Farm in Hemet, California, with the father of one of my riding students who attended Chadwick School. It's a private prep school in outside of Los Angeles, in Los Altos Hills. And then from there, we went to Los Osos. I can't remember how we happened to get there, but we leased a piece of land right on the coast with endless riding on the beach, where it was a part of a national park. It just happened to be a private piece of property on the edge of the national park. So we had endless riding. And that's why what I didn't mention before, when we were talking about endurance riding, that's where we organized the first, it was an international conference for managers of endurance rides, for judges, and riders. That's, when we had our top veterinarians, Matthew McKay Smith and Carrie Ridgway, and all of the, oh gosh, I forget now, another wonderful vet, George, who was the first vet to do acupuncture for horses, or one of the very first. And anyway, that was like, we had endless riding possibilities there. And so the father of one of my students who came to the school at Los Osos in the summer, we had summer school in every summer, and Sherry Miller came, and her father had a piece of land up in the mountains southeast of Visalia, California. So the 360-acre ranch, and it had been a chicken farm. And so we moved up there, and we moved with the idea that over the Christmas holidays, I think it was 1963, an adult called us from Los Angeles and said that she was a beginning adult rider, and she'd been reading our columns in Western Horseman and other magazines, because we had a syndicated column then in 8 magazines, horse magazines. And she wanted to come and ride with me, because her only possibility for lessons in Los Angeles were with kids. At she'd be in a class with a group of children, and they were so much faster at picking things up than she was, that she wanted to study with me. And so we realized, wait a minute, in the whole US, there were only 2 other places at the time where an adult could go to learn to be a riding instructor. And so we moved up to Los Osos, and it was really incredible because Wentworth converted the chicken building into a dorm, and it was really good. And then we had, I can't remember what the main building had been, but it was a wonderful, really big commercial kitchen because we usually had about 15 students and probably 4 or 5 of us and staff. And then we had big dining room with a grand piano because Wentworth played the grand piano. And then we had offices and a library. And that's what became the Pacific Coast Equestrian Research Farm School of Horsemanship. And we had students who came from 9 countries from between 1965 and 1972, I think, is when we shut it down. And then I moved on with Margaret Besnier, but that's a whole other story with the Hungarian horses. So, oh my goodness, the very first event that we had planned at the Pacific Coast Equestrian Research Farm in Badger, California, was a big endurance ride. It was a 50-mile endurance ride. And we had, competitors coming from all over because we were well known thanks to the syndicated to the column and the fact that we had this big national conference for judges, riders, and managers. So we were getting ready for this event, Mandy, and all of you reading or listening to this. And with the day before, they finally got the last parts of the kitchen done. We had a huge.
So you were planning this like as you were renovating the property to be the school. Oh, just right. Took on a few things at once, right?
Well, I mean, Went was amazing.
Yeah.
In this capacity, right?
So this would have been like the inaugural big event at the property.
Very big event. Kitchen just being finished, and I think we were planning, and we did feed, at least 50 people.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And we had Went had built this compound where we had outdoor stalls. I think they were 12 by 12 approximately for at least 40 horses.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was ready, thank goodness. And so it was a really big event, and I love the photos from that because we did something very different, and that was offer the idea that you could cut time off your endurance ride if you went down this very steep slide. We'll show some pictures. I'm in a long slope. You got 15 minutes, or if you went across the pond that we had, you got another 15 minutes. And so it was a very fun event. And we had like the top American veterinarian judges at that time, Dr. Wow. Richard Barcelow and Dick Barcelow and Carrie Ridgway were there. I can't remember what other vets at that one, but the pioneers and wow. Tops in the veterinary world in endurance riding. And
so was it a 50-mile ride?
It was a 50-miler.
Oh, yeah. And so did you have students at the school at this time?
No, we hadn't even opened the school.
This is right before, right? Okay.
The very first event.
Wow.
And so then we put out the word, and in order to enroll in the school for riding instructors, you had to have 10 years riding experience and be at least 18 years old. And so over those years, we had students, maybe I already said it, from 9 countries.
Okay? Oh, wow.
And 36 states. And we had all disciplines. That's what was really interesting, because we had people who've been riding Western, some on the East Coast, some in the Texas area, which means they're two very different styles. We had people who came and had been riding Tennessee walkers and dressage and, all different levels. And so what we did in this school was honor and acknowledge all of the different riding styles, and then say, this is the style that we are going to be teaching, which is the balanced seat style that was came from the American cavalry. And Gordon Wright wrote the first book, and George Morris is still very active today, was his, his student. And that was the style that we taught. And the concept was, if you learn the balanced seat style of riding, you can change the length of the stirrup, the style of your, where the stirrups are set, whether depending on what type of, where you are going to be teaching, Western, what part of the country. And of course, whether you're going to be working with pleasure horses, endurance horses, dressage, or eventing, because we did it all. And in order to graduate, you had to compete in a Western pleasure class. You had to get a 50% in a dressage test, and just at the first level of dressage. And of course, you had to compete in jumping and eventing. And it was this idea that we would not teach just one style, but give our students the understanding and opportunity to be able to bring a level of expertise depending on what was in the area and what was needed at the time. It was very great. And
wow. So really just creating really well-rounded horse people because really like a good balanced seat with classical equitation shouldn't really matter what discipline, really. I mean, when you're teaching them the good like fundamentals of your balanced equitation.
Well, and the point is, you see it in those days, and now it came back to us. That is a couple of years ago. Oh my God, this idea in jumping, you would have the heels way down. You would have the toes out. It's just like, I ran into it again 10 years ago. And is what's being taught again in the United States in jumping. So it's a little shocking to me.
Yeah, some of the hunter style is pretty funny. It's to watch when you see some of the what's gotten kind of trendy. But I think there's still like an overall sort of like just what's considered like a classically good seat on a horse. Depends
what part of
maybe
the world you're on. Definitely. I mean, you're spoiled by connected riding and centered riding.
Yeah,
that's a different thing. So anyway, it was really great. And of course, each student had 2 horses to take care of, because there was stable management. You learned all of the aspects of feeding, and the students would take turns being the stable manager for everybody. So they all learned that. And there were study classes, tests every week with all of the ailments and illnesses and feeding and breeds and judging horses.
Did Robin, is this where Robin popped up for summers or popped down?
She popped down for summers, absolutely. She also came to Los Osos. She also came when she was 9 years old to Hemet and rode with me for a whole month.
Well, because I only wonder, because I think when we were clearing out their house when they were moving, I found this giant binder from the school. I mean, it is really like a full curriculum. Like, it's unbelievable the amount of information in it, like stable management and riding and training.
Right. Yeah. And breeds and judging and
yeah, it's a huge amount of information.
Equipment. And we still have those. I still have one of them, which is really great to have.
Yeah.
And we had what we developed, we called 33 points of the balance seat. So that when you knew these points, you could simply change the style of saddle, the length of the stirrups, and all the students had to go, and we'll have some pictures here, like go cross country bareback, jumping bareback, and shorten their stirrups up jockey style and ride with a short strip. They also had to know how to shorten the stirrups at the trot and canter. And it was a fabulous school. And what's really interesting to me, I mean, I recently came across pictures that I had completely forgotten of Wentworth, riding and jumping. Now you have to think, he was in the cavalry the year I was born, at 1937, and he'd been on horses as an engineer going out searching in the mountains of in the Rocky Mountains for oil anomalies, but he hadn't jumped a horse or been on a horse, and his style is like classical at the time, you know, American balance seat riding. Fascinating. And how I adapted the style over the years, for the safest, most stable seat, the heel was down more than we do now. I just want the foot level, unless I'm going cross country jumping or on a young horse. I would be sitting very differently. So depending on what you're preparing for, if you're going to be riding like on safari and riding all day, you don't ride the same style as you're going to be in the arena.
Well, I suppose part of it, right? You just made people really aware of what they were doing so you could change it. Because if you don't know what you do, you can't change it.
That's very true.
So where did the horses come from?
Oh, we had wonderful, wonderful school horses. I mean, really excellent. I bought some of them from local auctions, some thoroughbred. We had one wonderful show and school horse named Bay Rum. I bought him at auction as 6-year-old. His name was Old Dobbin. He had been out at grass, had a pot belly, was not a very beautiful horse. And I, just by changing his name and bring him into the program and seeing him differently, he turned into one of our top show horses. I bought a small horse, actually from Los Osos Hills. I forget his name, it was Red something or other. I bought him as a unsafe horse that would take off with you. And he turned out to be one of our most consistent, wonderful Western pleasure horses for shows and student horses, and also showed at the lower levels of dressage. And a little horse named it's in the book now. I'm really forgetting these names. He was about 14 too, and he was, again, a difficult horse. We bought horses for not much money because their owners had trouble with him, and he was amazing. We've got a picture of him over a huge ditch at Pebble Beach at the 3-day event at Pebble Beach, and he was completely consistent if you respected him. And if a rider thought, well, I don't want to ride a pony, he was really naughty. And of course, my theory at the school was, I don't want anybody riding a horse they don't like. It's not fair to the horse. So you had choices of what horses you would ride. And and of course we had like 12 Hungarians from Countess Margaret Bessigny.
So you knew her at that point?
She first came to us, called us on the phone because of our Western Horseman monthly articles, asked if she could bring a couple of her horses to spend Christmas holidays with us in Los Osos.
Okay.
So she showed up with a big 4-horse van and her big dogs and these 2 horses and a couple of cases of really great champagne. we so enjoyed her company. Stayed at a local hotel, and then she started coming like every several Christmases. She would come.
Wow. She had a ranch in Montana as well. And then did she live in the Bay Area?
No, she had a 5,000-acre ranch that belonged to her grandfather, who was the president of the American Jockey Club, and a Bitterroot ranch. And that's where she lived, between the ranch there and her place in Maryland.
Oh, in Maryland. So, in the Bitterroot Mountains, like in Montana, though.
In Hamilton, Montana.
Oh yeah, I drove through there recently.
It's been stunning country. So it was so anyway, she had about 12 horses in training with me, and they didn't come just for a couple of months. They came for 2 years, and we would campaign them.
Oh, yeah.
And the theory was that we would start them under saddle and then have them for sale, because her money managers wanted her to be able to show some sales, but she really wasn't into selling horses. So it was very hard to find somebody who would make her confident enough that they would take good care of her, of the horses. So yeah, and it was really interesting. Hungarian horses, particularly of some lines, like the Clover line, were famous throughout the centuries for being, they were called a secret weapon in the Hungarian army, because they would bond with one rider. And so if a soldier was killed, nobody else could ride the horse.
Wow.
And so I had one of those Clover lines that was sent to me as a 4-year-old, big, lovely 16 one-hand mare, Godiva. And she was the only horse that I didn't have my other students ride her, because I just loved that mare so much. So every day I rode her and I showed her, and we won really a lot with her. And when I sent her back to Countess Skirke, where she came from in Virginia, Charlottesville, they swore that I had never done anything with her because nobody else could ride her.
Wow.
Fortunately, we had a lot of photographs and a lot of trophies that showed how great she was. But I learned from that, every other horse that we got of that Hungarian line, we made sure that from the beginning they were ridden by, the students. And of course, our students were really good. I was completely spoiled, Mandy, because, most trainers or teachers have students where they come, once a month, once a week, and for ongoing lessons. But our students came to us for 9 months and rode 5 days, 6 days a week, some of them 7 days a week. So it's a very different level of relationship you have with your students. And yeah, it was a great, great time. And it was so much fun that Robin was there. And I wish she was not in Australia right now. We could
I know.
get her on here and talk about her time at the school.
Yeah, I mean, I think
She was,
certainly was an influential time in her life.
well, I think she was like around 13 at the time. But
So it would have been at Westwind when she met Phil, right? Because she was at your place when she met Phil.
she was at Westwind, right?
Oh, great. So maybe she'll have to come in for when we chat about that.
She has to.
So you guys, you had the school until 72, and it was a residential school. And I'm sure just we'll have to link Shannon's book, Strike a Long Trot, because it really documents so much about the school and the details and great photographs and like the experience of being a student there.
Yes, it was really, really wonderful.
So at this point, though, with you and Went, you're still married. And did the school end when you two ended?
Well, when I don't think I've told this publicly before, but I think it's really worth telling, because my life looks so ideal, and we all have issues in our lives, and how do we deal with them? And so what happened, Went had, he didn't think it was a problem, but I would definitely say an alcohol problem. So that every day, about, I thought it was around 3 o'clock. Our neighbor, who was a rancher and a psychologist, thought it was at 10 in the morning. I didn't remember that part. But anyway, after 3, there was a rule. No decision could be made after 3 o'clock, because any decision that was made, he had to sign it because he didn't remember. And so where it all started to really unravel was we had a program exchange with Prescott College, and I had taken Val Pruitt Sievertson, and I forget another student, she would remember who else, we drove from our ranch in Badger, California, to Prescott, Arizona. And I gave a presentation to students at Prescott. And then we exchanged so that Val and I and Roland, I mean,
Oh,
when Roland was there, Roland was helping us out at that time and drove living with us with his wife and 2 kids.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I had no idea. Oh, that's funny.
Then it,
I've never
I mean,
heard that. I just thought you'd met at Chadwick.
well, we did, but
Well,
then,
no, I know, but I didn't realize you'd still had contact with him.
well, we used to almost like when he got married to Judy, we sent him a wedding present. And then 10 years later, we had a class reunion from Chadwick class coming up from Los Angeles, because most of these kids were from the Hollywood bunch. And so we had this reunion, and after the reunion, Went was in the process of starting a second home program for people who would come for vacation, like that summer home up to Badger. And Roland stayed on to help him and brought his family and kids that are now my kids.
Yeah.
And so where was this story taking? Oh yeah.
Prescott.
So,
You were in
that-
Prescott.
He drove actually the van to Prescott with Val. So the deal was that Val and I and Roland would do rappelling and climbing. And then Roy Smith, who was the head of Outward Bound at Prescott College, would bring a group of his students to our ranch, and they would learn to ride on the weekend.
Okay. Oh,
And so they were all there, and in the dining room, we had a process that each student was responsible to be a host different times of the week or over the weeks. And so we were all sitting and we had maybe, I don't know, 4 tables in the dining room, and Roy Smith, the head of the Outward Bound, and a group of students were sitting at the table with Went and myself. And so at dessert time, the hostess came back with pears and for dessert. And Wentworth said, I ordered peaches. And I thought, really? I mean, is there a big difference between pears and peaches? He apparently thought so. And so he gets up from the table, stomps into the kitchen, and he came back and he said, well, our cook might quit, because he yelled at her really unfairly. And I said, and I tell you, this is like my angel speaking through me, I wouldn't blame her. Now you have to understand, Mandy Pretty, never, I mean, I was 20 years old, younger than he was, and never in all those years did I dare to ever like talk back.
and this is in front of people, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just casually. I said, well,
Yeah,
and he said, what did you say? I said, I wouldn't blame her for quitting over that. He said, step outside. So, okay. So I stepped outside, and fortunately for everybody, there was a solid door there, so they couldn't see what happened. So he stands in front of me and he says, what did you say? I said, I wouldn't blame her. He said, and he punches me and knocks me down. And I mean, I laugh about it because one time I was described by Mrs. Jackson, a big Arabian horse breeder, as tough as a boiled owl. When I was riding our thoroughbred stallion, and he went like straight in the air, right? It didn't bother me. And that's when I got the reputation as tough as a boiled owl. And so it's like, I didn't have any emotion about it. So I just pop up, and Mandy, the feeling I had, I don't know, maybe in your lifetime you've never had, we had these little dodo birds that were, it was a funny thing on the edge of a glass and it would plop
Yeah,
back.
yeah.
Just like I felt, that's what I saw. I was a dodo bird. I just stood there. He said, say that again. I did. Knocks me down again. I just
Wow.
like a dodo bird.
Had he ever hit you before?
No,
That was first, yeah. It was just the public humiliation and the alcohol and just his rage.
no, he threw, I have this scar from a whiskey glass here.
Oh, so he had, yeah. So that was from before that.
That was when I wouldn't tell him which of our teachers had suggested that she ride one of the stallions, like we had just gotten in training. And I wouldn't tell him. And so he was about, I don't know, 15 feet away from me and threw a
Wow.
whiskey glass at me. But you see, the thing is, you can't understand it in this day and age because holy mackerel, you know, you say, well, I'm out of here, I'm going to get a divorce. In 19, that was what did I say, 66 or no, that had to be 19.
Late 60s.
Late 60s. Divorce really wasn't an option. I certainly didn't want to leave the ranch. And
Yeah,
what could
you know, I think it's lots of people are still, it's maybe it's not the divorce is taboo now, but lots of people even now would have a hard, you know, the situation is not that straightforward. You know, there's a lot of moving pieces and it's not just leaving him, it's leaving your whole life.
Exactly. So, I mean, it didn't even cross my mind. And so anyway, this time, so the second time he knocked me down, I jumped up, just stood there and looked at him. I didn't cry. I didn't feel hurt. I didn't feel anything, actually.
But isn't that how you survived? You just sort of had to like shut him down, like shut it out.
Yeah, very much. And so, so then he said, well, I think we better go for a walk. Then I think that's a really good idea. So I told him all the things that where I thought he'd made some really stupid mistakes. And it's too much to go into here, but he had done some really, really alcohol-induced stupid mistakes with, you know, sponsors and people. And so he said, well, and the next morning he said, I'm going to our apartment in San Francisco and you can think about this. And I'm telling you, Mandy, when he walked out the door, I was so relieved. You cannot imagine. Because I mean, I had the support of Margaret Bessonnier. You know, every day on the phone, we would talk for about an hour about her horses. And so Went was gone about a month, and I had his son Jay was there helping me. Roland was there helping me. My top riding instructor who would taught with me went off with Went to our apartment. But we were fine. And about, I didn't, think about it. We had the
Well, wasn't it? It must have been a relief to have him gone for a while.
no.
So was he like romantically linked to your instructor?
Yeah.
Oh, so was that just a known fact?
A total.
Oh, kept him off your back.
Remember, this is the 60s. I mean, it was fine. I was really happy.
Yeah, no, it's, I mean, kept him away from you.
Exactly.
Oh, wow. So this is the late 60s, like it was
we were friends. We were in the late 60s. This is not a terrible situation. But what didn't bother me, there was nothing secret about it. It was
right,
just,
yeah.
And that when I first found out, and again, you think, why would you tell all this private stuff? I've never told it before, because I think it's important, because I know that other people have gone through things like this. And,
No, I think it's valid, because it does, especially with social media and, all the beautiful photos and all the books and things, kind of, I mean, you have a charm life, but doesn't mean you haven't had a lot of stuff to get through and experience.
I'm going to show you something. This book right here shaped my life, because the first time that Wentworth ever had brought a person I didn't know into our home and was sleeping in our bed with this person, I was in the kitchen boo-hooing at midnight. And then I thought, this isn't helping me. I need help. And I went to our library, and we had a very big library because Wentworth, you know, he had a really big range of books. So I just reach up and pull this book down. And this is the book that I recommend to every thinking person. It's called The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. And I just brought it back to the kitchen, opened the book, and like intuited just to see what would happen. And I opened it to the chapter on sorrow and joy. And the book, his treatise on sorrow and joy is that the self-same well from which your sorrows flow shall also flow your joy. And I remember sitting at the kitchen table and thinking, yes, come on, tears, because someday this well will be so deep and it will be full with joy. And I mean, if I hadn't had that, it was so simple. And so after that, I just made a rule to Wentworth. And actually, I realized in retrospect, if I had said, stop this does not work for me, I think he would have. But, on the other hand, looking at it from his point of view, come on, he was this amazingly intelligent person. He was an inventor. He was on the RAND think tank in Los Angeles. He was an intellectual, brilliant person. And he was surrounded with up there in the mountains. When we were at Chadwick School, he had colleagues. We had other people who could think. I mean, I didn't know anything, and I never had any kind of discussion with them. And because I didn't know anything in those days, and he had no one else. And so it had to be very frustrating for him. And, he was a beatnik, for heaven's sake. This thing of having other women was not a big deal. And so
I mean, I feel like you are very gracious and give him a lot of credit in that sense. But I didn't know him. But it sounds like there was also a little bit of narcissism going on there in his case.
Oh,
so
I mean, the two things. I mean, today you see it as a sexual problem, but in those days, come on, when he went to college and in that time of the beatnik era, that was totally normal. If you read Jane Fonda's first book, My Life So Far, she had exactly the same experience that I had with her first husband. Exactly. And that's why I'm talking about it, because
I think you should, but I don't think you should also blame yourself on not being interesting enough for him.
It's not a blame, it's realism. It's realism. I mean, it's no blame. It's not my problem. But the fact is, I made a rule. I said, whatever you do, you cannot lie to me. Because boy, when somebody lies to you, you know it. And if you don't say anything, or you just stuff it and don't have anyone to talk to about it, or get it, find some place of peace within your heart, that's not good. I've had friends that I think it's what caused their cancers, because they never opened their mouths. So anyway, Khalil Gibran, so beautiful about just these simple, every page about all parts of life, death and children. And
I'll make sure we also link that book besides Shannon's. I mean, broad selection, but
well, it's a basic book that every thinking person would find useful. And
so he came back after about a month, sort of.
No,
he didn't come back after being in San Francisco.
Oh, no, thank heaven. So about every morning in my talks with Margaret Bessinier, she's still not back, right? And so about a month later, she said, Linda, why don't you get a divorce? Never crossed my mind. I said, okay. She said, listen, get a divorce, shut down the school, find a place in the San Francisco area, because that was the area where her horses were had good possibilities for marketing. And then we could join the hunt club and then, be not out in the boondocks.
This is in the early 70s now?
This was, I've got to find the exact, I might have found the date of the divorce actually in the back of a Bible that my grandmother gave me.
Huh.
I should emblazon it, tattoo it somewhere, because I can never remember when we actually got a divorce. And so
we would know when the school ended.
Story. Wait, that's another story. That's my next husband. Oops, forgot. Anyway, okay. So, more to come.
Yeah, well, there's a lot. You've lived.
So anyway, so when Margaret Bessonier said, "Why don't you get a divorce?" I said, "Well, that makes sense." And she said, you find a place, I will buy it, and you'll take my horses there to train and sell and market." And so I started looking, and what was really interesting, like, how am I going to tell my mother? Divorce in the family. I don't know why I even thought about it, because my parents were so amazingly generous. So I call my mom, like think, oh, how am I going to tell her? And I tell her, "Mom, I'm filing for divorce." And she said, "Oh dear, thank God, finally." Now, this was our mom. That's your grandmother. She never, ever, ever made a comment about Wentworth before. And she knew what was going on because Robin had seen him throw a cup of coffee in my face in front of summer students with kids there, just because we had just gotten a new stallion in for training or I know we bought the horse and hadn't gelded him yet. And one of our riding teachers, Eleanor Walches, who was a really excellent horsewoman, had come in and said, "Should I ride him?" Because we hadn't even ridden him yet. And we just bought him without riding him because we knew we could train him. And I said yes, and we're sitting there after dinner with these kids. Robin was at the table, and I think she was maybe 11 or 12. And he said, "Why did you tell her that she could ride that stallion?" Like, why wouldn't I? And I said, "Because she's a very competent rider. Why wouldn't I?" And he had a cup of coffee in his hand and he threw it in my face. And it's interesting. I don't know that I had the right reaction, because my response was not to react at all, just to look at him like, what? I mean, not even with an expression, because even that I knew was dangerous. And I just looked at him and sat there and kept on talking. And, I should ask Robin.
If she remembers
Oh, she remember.
Yeah.
No,
well, I'm sure she does. She has a great memory too, and that would really burn into a 10-year-old's or 11-year-old's mind.
Yeah, and she told Mom, of course. But the thing is, like, what should I have done? I mean, I could not have reacted. That could be really dangerous. You don't know.
I'm not sure there's a right reaction in that scenario or wrong,
So anyway, in the kitchen was our cook, Dottie, and she told me after, it was all she could do to not take the butcher knife and go after him. That wouldn't have been a good scene. We would have been on the big news then. Anyway, wow. I never discussed it with him, because you could not. It was not safe.
No.
Something would like go off in him, and that was not a safe place.
Besides the alcoholism, I mean, was he bipolar, or did he have other sort of mental health issues like that were undiagnosed and untreated? Do you think? I mean, you can only speculate, but I didn't know if he at any point, or depression or anything, did he?
No, with that type of person, who knows? I mean,
yeah, no, just
never discussed.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go at some point. I think I had discussed the possibility of going to a counselor with him. And I mean,
I was met with quite a reaction,
yeah.
dismissal.
And the point is, I realize now, knowing this man, that he would have just, played games.
Manipulated the whole situation anyways. Yeah. So Margaret Bethany convinced you to get a divorce and supported you to have a landing pad.
He didn't convince me.
Well, she supported you to have, yeah. Well, she gave you an option. She gave you an out, really, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and so what happened was Jay, Went's son, and Roland just and my teachers were kept on there teaching. Eleanor Walches, I mean, who was just a wonderful, wonderful riding instructor. And she kept that class going while I started to move over to the other. We found a place, a beautiful place in Los Altos Hills. And then we ended that class and then moved the horses over. And Roland was there. He brought the horses over in our vans. And the thing is, I was, I want to talk about this divorce business because I see so many women be supported, it seems, in when they get a divorce, going after the person. Now, in some cases, holy moly, I mean, I know I have a couple of friends whose husbands just went bankrupt or hid everything, and I can understand that. But it doesn't help yourself to get really angry unless you can do something about it. And anyway, I was lucky because Went and I don't mean lucky, I was blessed. My angels were definitely around me because Went and I discussed it and I bought him out, basically. I paid him for the name, for, our equipment, our vans, our horses, and took them with.
Did Margaret Bessonier help you buy him out, or did you just have your own separate bank account the whole time you were married?
I have no idea at this point. I do not. No, I didn't have a separate. No, I had no separate bank account. I don't remember how that came down. Isn't that weird? We never had a lawyer. We just, he wrote up the papers.
So he wasn't shocked by you approaching him and wanting a divorce?
No, because he had said, and he reminded me of this, he had said years before, at some point, you being 20 years younger, you're going to want to be on your own. And so he wasn't angry, he wasn't shocked.
No. It was just sort of pretty amicable considering the situation.
It just was.
Yeah. What was it? It was like a business agreement. Sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
And the thing that's interesting for you, for you perhaps, is the fact that, I mean, until the day he died, we remained in touch. And at one point, he actually tried to talk me into taking him back. And he would set up a international school for me in the Bahamas where people could come to me. Because that was like 10 years later when I had, already made.
Like in the early 80s or something? Where you'd already sort of started, you were known on your own.
I know I was. It had to be actually only a few years later.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I come to think about it because
So what did he do after you got divorced? Because did you really see it? Did he come back to the farm, or was he just in San Francisco and you guys sorted your paperwork out?
We had an incredible apartment in San Francisco, right in the very center. I mean, 2-bedroom apartment. I think we paid like $220 a month for it.
Wow.
It was wonderful. So that's where he was. And he just went on and did other interesting things. And I was years later where he came back and tried to sell me shares in a gold mine in Nigeria. Yeah, right.
Wow. Wild. Well, I mean,
the good news is, we stayed in touch. I can't say as real friends because we certainly weren't enemies by any means. I had a lot of respect for him. I had tremendous respect. I wouldn't be sitting here with you if it wasn't for Went. Come on. I mean, his genius and his marketing ability and his ability to impress and make friends with some amazing people who were part of my life and our lives. Yep, I wouldn't be here otherwise. So I have nothing but gratitude for that. And you know, when Gabrielle Boiselle wrote the book, Linda Trusts Your Intuition.
It's in German. Yeah, it's published in German for German speakers.
German, right. She was convinced that Wentworth was using me, you know, to market me, which is what he did. But I mean, what a great experience that was for me. Come on, Annie. I would not be here, Mandy Pretty.
I mean, he was an influential part of your life. I mean, I think it's a good thing.
Yep.
You know, I mean, it's a good thing you were able to move to a different part of your life, because I don't think that over decades and decades, I don't know how you could have compartmentalized that kind of
it was the right time.
Yeah.
All the right time.
Wow.
So onward. So
well, that's the next. I mean, again, we're still just in the 70s, and I don't know very much about it. West Wind Hungarians is where we're going next, correct? Los Altos Hills. Got lots of great photos from that era too, where my parents met. So we can thank that place for me.
I can't to hear the story.
I heard my father had waist length hair and was blonde, so that's shocking enough.
Really?
Apparently when he came back from Mexico, maybe he'd cut it by the time he'd made it to the Bay Area, but when he showed up in Los Angeles in my great aunt's house, apparently she slammed the door in his face. She didn't recognize him.
Oh, you're kidding. And you know, he was with Randy.
Yep. Yes.
I'm pretty sure.
At some point they probably, I mean, Randy's they knew Randy as my uncle Randy as a teenager in high school. I don't know if he was traveling with him then.
Oh, no. It must have been
anyway, but that's another story, another era. All right. Well, I think that kind of wraps up the idea of, gives us a good idea of how the school started, how it went. We'll make sure to link Shannon's book, because that has a great amount of information and detail about.
And I mean, it's a book that stands on its own.
Totally.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm going to show you the book.
It's right below. I saw it. It was right behind you, I think, on the one shelf down. Maybe I saw it when you were turning around.
I want you to see it, because it's full of photographs, and I rearranged some of the pictures for another. Oh, here, it's right there. Right here.
And so are those photos, you know how there's so many photos of you on the Arabs on the dunes, are those from Los Osos when you were conditioning on the beach?
No, this has been Galita. This is in Del Mar.
Oh, that's in Del Mar. Okay.
That's in Del Mar. Yeah.
Okay. So was that when you were based in Hemet? You'd go to Del Mar?
No, it was when I was invited to some big event in Del Mar, where I was honored for this win with, it must have been Arabian Horse Association.
Yeah.
Something. I don't remember.
Well, that's shocking, because you've only done more than most people fit into several lifetimes. So
yeah, but the thing is, Shannon was a student in my school in 1967. And the cool thing is, I just called her this morning. I mean, we've been in touch ever since. And this book is her experience as a young person and all the amazing things that she did in the school. And
there are lots of great photos.
And the horses, the description of the horses, you know, it's just like, and like this is a picture of me with Rockefeller that was in New York State Fair, and we were giving a presentation. This is just Lynn and myself on 2 of the Hungarian stallions, but there were 4 of us jumping with no bridles, and the 4 horses against each other, and Rockefeller was there. This is just a simple one of the stages. See, it's 4 of us with our arms out, and we didn't have bridles on. We just had these little, what we call Indian, like just a little string in the horse's mouth. It's before we were using the neck ring.
When were you doing, was that a tour you did around the United States and that was on the Hungarians?
A tour to promote the Hungarian horses for Countess Margaret Bethany.
And that was with students in the late 60s?
Yes.
Oh, wow. I didn't know the exact timeline of those, but there's some great photos. I mean,
Well,
pretty
this had to
amazing
be-
presentations.
This had to be 1968. I'm pretty sure 60, yeah, 8. Does it say? I don't know. But that's right when it was. Yeah,
Wow.
it was really fun.
Wow. Well, thanks, Linda. We'll chat. I guess we'll get into more about this like elusive Margaret Bessigny because she sounded like an unbelievable woman. So I look forward to hearing more about her and your time at Westwind.
She was, yes, and we had some. Now, I think what we should do, Mandy, for the next time, let's pull some pictures so we can just screen share them.
Sure. Yeah. We can
And-
pop up some because
It's so much fun.
Yeah.
You know,
Let's do
do
it.
that.
Perfect.
Hello.
Okay. Bye. Thanks, Linda.
Yes, and you know what I'm going to do now, Mandy? I'm so excited. I'm going to go out and check to see how our emerging butterflies are coming because I have like 3 caterpillars and we're keeping track, and I bought 2 more milkweed plants yesterday. And so every day I'm watching them, and something happened last night. I haven't figured it out. I don't know anything about these little creatures.
And they're monarchs, right?
We're not sure.
Oh, it'll be a fun surprise.
Well, the point is, at the Butterfly World in Delray Beach, they have also the local butterflies. So there are 2
wow.
local ones. So I'm just not quite sure about this story with the monarchs. Like, how come we have monarchs here?
I don't know much about
I'm just
butterflies.
learning, but I'm so excited. And I put them on Facebook, taking pictures. Oops. Okay.
Okay, well, we'll talk to you soon. Bye.